dare I say that there is a maturity when it comes to the L3 Federation, and that they are looking at this as the next 2 years of development. But it's easy to say that now. When the results get bad, and there is history when it comes to Mexico getting their ass kicked in Copa Americas. Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue colored glasses. This show, well, we'll be talking a special edition State of the Union, where we look at the Copa America and Euros coming this summer, and we preview what's going to happen. In particular, maybe some dark horses out there for those of you that like to bet, or even if you don't like to bet. But first, joining me as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how are you doing today as we come to you? I am coming to you from New York. You are back there in Los Angeles. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Another summer of soccer approaching. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yes, we have these two major tournaments that we will be doing simultaneously when it comes over there, Fox. And look, we're going to get knee deep into the teams and the groups as we get closer and closer. And this is just kind of a primer for what to expect. But from morning until night, and let's be honest, well into the night, you will have so much soccer at your disposal. You will have so many teams that you know, many teams that you don't, players that you know, players that you don't. When it comes to the U.S., obviously a home team playing in Copa America, and all sorts of stars on both sides of the Atlantic. So it is looking scrumptious so far. Where would you like to start when it comes to these two tournaments, Mosse?
Well, as you know, there are 6 CONCACAF teams involved in the Copa America. You and Stu Holden taped a pod entirely devoted to the U.S., So we're going to begin today's pod by talking about the other 5 CONCACAF teams, discussing their prospects for this summer. We'll take them in order based on the groups they are in. Canada is in Group A. They made big news recently by appointing Jesse Marsch as their head coach. We know there's plenty of talent on hand, the likes of Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, Tajon Buchanan. We also know it's been a tumultuous last couple of years for Canadian soccer. So what's your outlook for them this summer?
Well, first off, I know we talk at times about the odds and, when it comes to maybe putting some money on different teams here. I'll be interested to see what the odds makers make of Jesse Marsch and if that does improve the odds of Canada. Now, keep in mind that this is a Canadian team that, while they historically finally went back to the World Cup in 2022, it was not a good World Cup. And it also has to be said that in the last couple of years since then, it has not gone well for the Canadian Football Federation and for this team. Hopefully, they're looking to jumpstart their fortunes this summer. Ranked 49th in FIFA over there. Even with Jesse Marsch, I still think that this team struggles. And so unless he is able to very, very quickly implement both an ability and a belief that can somehow make them better than some of the individual talent that they have and pull them into a group, which he's certainly capable of doing, I still don't see how Canada has a successful Copa America this summer. So I don't have high hopes yet for Canada. This is a process relative to 2026. And while Jesse Marsch, I think, will use this summer, I don't think it's necessarily going to translate immediately into results. But they do have players. They do have history, not in this tournament, but they do have history, and they do have an ability every once in a while to put everything together and have very good games.
I will say, while the opener against Argentina will be rough, I do think they have a shot at getting out of this group because I don't rate the other 2 teams in it at all, Chile and Peru. Ricardo Gareca worked miracles with Peru. They don't have a whole lot of talent, and now that he's gone, they're really suffering for it. He's ironically gone to Chile, where he's going to have to work miracles there because they squeezed everything they could out of that golden generation. There was nothing coming up behind it, so Chile have suffered a real drop-off here as well. So I know what you're saying about Canada, but to me, it's not that much of a leap to think they can get results against either Chile and Peru and maybe get out of this group.
Hey, listen, from your lips to the Canadian God's ears up there, and to Jesse Marsch, I hope it happens, because this would be huge in terms of propelling them forward and being in a much more positive place. And look, they're still going to have problems off the field with the federation and money and all that kind of stuff. But if they can start to put together solid and consistent performances in a tournament type of setting, then they're going to be much more ready to go come 2026. And to your point, this is not the Peru and the Chile at times that you have thought about in the past. So it is there. And who knows, they get, all the euphoria of that first game. Their games will be played in Canada in front of a home crowd, although there'll be plenty of people up there to see Argentina and Messi. I think that could be something special. And if they start off on the right foot in that first game, then to your point, all to play for in those next two.
Mexico is the seeded team in Group B. They're alongside Ecuador, Venezuela, and Jamaica, which we'll talk about in a minute. But as far as Mexico goes, we know the pressure is on Jimmy Lozano. I think a bad Copa America, and it would be curtains for him. He's made some big calls regarding the squad, leaving out the likes of Guillermo Ochoa and Chucky Lozano. What are you expecting from El Tri in this Copa America?
I'm expecting it to look different by design. I am expecting, because of some of the decisions that were made and because of the public way that they are focusing on the under 23s and on younger players, and in doing so kind of admitting that they lost their way. I'm expecting big things. Now, yes, in normal circumstances, I would say if it doesn't go well this summer, he is out. But because they've made such a point going into this tournament of, a changing of the guard and really going and mining some of those, some of the young players and some of the lesser known talent out there to signify a move in a different direction, I wonder how much leash that gets him. And we rarely talk about leash when it comes to coaches for Mexico. But dare I say that there is a maturity when it comes to the El Tri Federation, and that they are looking at this as the next 2 years of development. But it's easy to say that now. When the results get bad, and there is history when it comes to Mexico getting their ass kicked in Copa Americas, it doesn't matter how progressive you look, or it doesn't matter how much of a plan you may have laid out in front of the ownership and the leadership when it comes to the federation. They will change like that.
Yeah, remember they lost 7-0 to Chile in the Centenario in 2016. I do think they overreacted to winning the 2023 Gold Cup and giving Jimmy Lozano the job permanently. I'm not sure he's up to it. But the bigger issue there, we've talked about this on the pod before, I think Mexico is dealing with an existential crisis. There are not enough Mexican players in Europe. They've yet to accept the fact that if you're going to be a country in the Americas in the year 2024, you want to have a successful national team, your national team and your domestic league have to exist in different ecosystems. And the fact that all the players originally came up through your domestic clubs has to be enough to give you that sense of representation. There are still far too many Mexican national team players that currently play in Liga MX. And to me, that's just not a formula for success.
Okay. Well, we'll see if that changes at all, or if some of these young players, come up and grab a hold of this opportunity. If I was a young Mexican player right now, I would look at this as, hey, the door is wide open. And it's not desperation, but there is a little bit of desperation in what El Tri is doing right now. And I think that they've seen the writing on the wall, and they know that 26 is going to come quicker than they believe, and they better be ready. So they need to do the things, and even some tough things, that in order to put themselves in the best position to succeed. Yeah,
Santi Jimenez is the player to watch for me. He scored the game winner in the Gold Cup final against Panama. We'll see what he can do this upcoming summer. Jamaica also in Group B. We know Jamaica recently almost beat the U.S. in the Nations League semis despite missing all their best players through injury or suspension. So presumably they're going to have all those guys back in the fold: Mikel Antonio, Damari Gray, Leon Bailey, DeJuan Richards, Ethan Pinnock, Amari Bell. You've got Andre Blake in goal. So there is some talent there. You've got a decent coach in Hal Grimson. So what do you think? Can Jamaica perhaps make some noise in this Copa America?
I think that, well, first off, if everybody is on board and copacetic, and that's a big if, but if they are, it's a very different type of Jamaica team that you're talking about when you add all of those different players. And, Andre Blake, in and of itself, he can change the complexion of a game because of his ability at times to stand on his head. And I think he's going to have to going forward. But we've also seen a Jamaica, even with talent, that implodes. And I just think it's hit or miss with Jamaica. And as long as it is hit, I think they can beat anybody in their group. Honestly, I think they do. They have that ability and that talent. The problem is if it's miss, and it's just they don't show up on the day, either because people have been fighting and they didn't show up to the team, or they're just not feeling good, or God forbid Andre Blake has a bad game, then it could be problems for Jamaica.
I agree. Group B is the most unpredictable for me. You've got Mexico, Ecuador, Venezuela, and Jamaica. You could tell me any order there, and I would believe it. To me, all those teams are hit or miss, so we'll see how that group unfolds this summer. We move ahead to Group C. That's obviously the U.S.'s group, but the other CONCACAF team in it is Panama, who we know can be frisky. We saw this at the last Gold Cup. Christensen is a good manager. You've got players like Barcenas and Fajardo, Ismael Diaz, Carrasquilla, Quintero, Godoy. So to me, they are not lightweights, but I don't see them finishing above either the U.S. or Uruguay in this group. So I can't see Panama advancing from Group C.
No, I mean, look, as much as I love Carrasquilla, and I think he can at times control the game, I don't think that they're as good as the U.S. And I think that, well, I know the U.S. doesn't believe that they're as good as them, but I also don't think that Panama believes that they are as good as the U.S. And, when you're talking about these Jamaicas and Panamas and Costa Ricas, they certainly have the lay of the land, literally having played many, many games over here in the U.S. And so they will be comfortable. But when it comes to these games where it's CONCACAF versus CONCACAF, you know exactly what you're getting, and that can work for you and against you. And in this case, when it comes to Panama, while I think that you mentioned the quality that they do have, I don't think that Panama believes that they can beat the U.S., and I don't think that the U.S. believes that they can lose to Panama.
Yeah, Bolivia is the other team in that group. I could see Panama finishing above Bolivia, finishing third, but I do think the U.S. and Uruguay will finish in the top two in some order. And then we move to Group D, where I think we have the weakest CONCACAF team in this field, which is Costa Rica. They're in a group with Brazil, Colombia, Paraguay. I know a lot of people said the same thing all the way back in the 2014 World Cup when they were in a group with England, Uruguay, and Italy, and they ended up topping the group. So you never know. But I would be stunned if Costa Rica made it out of this group.
I mean, look, the problem for Costa Rica is, they are the weakest team, I think, in this group. And I think their only hope is to kind of muck it up. And you can get away with that for one game, but I don't think you're getting away with it in these three opponents for 3 games here. So they are long in the tooth. And while they did show that they can find some of that old magic, it's just so few and far between that I just don't think that they're good enough for the competition that they have in the group with Paraguay, Colombia, and Brazil.
That is it.
All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll flip it over to the Euros. Okay, welcome back. Before we get to the Euros, Mosse, I wanted to ask you about some dark horses, because I know a lot of people out there are, they got some money burning away in their pocket, and they're saying, hey, maybe there's some opportunities when it comes to the odds, when it comes to Copa America. So who would you put money on that would win you some money?
Well, first off, let's take a look at the Copa America odds, and then I'll give you one of my dark horses.
Okay.
If you see there, the 10 leading odds to win the tournament, 1 through 5, and then you'll see 6 through 10 in a second. As far as dark horses, keep in mind, there are two CONMEBOL nations that have never won the Copa America, Ecuador and Venezuela. And to me, they both work as dark horses for this tournament. Venezuela off to a great start in World Cup qualifying. They're also the only CONMEBOL nation that's never been to a World Cup, but they're in fourth right now. They've got some players I like. Solomon Rondon tearing it up with Pachuca in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. However, I am going to go with Ecuador as my big dark horse. I like this Ecuador team. They're managed by Felix Sanchez, who was the Qatar coach at the last World Cup. After that disastrous campaign, he more or less landed on his feet getting the Ecuador job. They've got some players I really like, including this teenager, Kendry Paez, who's going to be heading to Chelsea when he turns 18, who I think is an incredible talent, could be the breakout star of this Copa America. You've got Moises Caicedo, who despite an up-and-down season at Chelsea, I still rate very highly. Hincapié at Leverkusen, Estupinian at Brighton, and then Ener Valencia up there, who is their all-time leading scorer. He has 6 goals in 6 matches in World Cup play. He scored twice at the Centenario back in 2016. Big game player, loves major tournaments. So I like this team. They're in a group with Mexico, Venezuela, and Jamaica. I could see them topping this group, which would give them a favorable quarterfinal matchup against the second-place finisher in Group A. And so there's a very plausible path there for Ecuador to get to the semis, and then who knows? So I would pick Ecuador as my dark horse.
Oh, and according to the odds here, that's a plus 1,600, right? So you win some money over there, my friend. That would be good. I mean, all right. So I would probably, if I'm not going to go with Ecuador, because that's certainly a good call, I would go with the Vino Tinto over there for Venezuela and what they are. And at times, in qualifying, Venezuela have surged up and then fallen back down. Right now they're sitting pretty, but they're plus 7,000 if you want Venezuela. So you'd win a whole lot more. And I'm a risky guy. I don't care. I'll just throw it on Venezuela.
Fair enough. Should we transition to the Euros?
Yes, let's do that.
We can take a look at those betting odds as well. And as far as a dark horse for the Euros, I went a couple different ways on this. I thought about Hungary. I really like Szoboszlai. I like the way they played in qualifying. I like the way Austria played in qualifying. Ralf Rangnick, who recently turned down the Bayern Munich job to coach Austria at this Euro, so you must think they have a chance to make some noise. They could be frisky, but I am going to go with Turkey. They have 2 teenagers that I think could be breakout stars in this tournament. Arda Güler, who plays for Real Madrid, and then Yildiz, a kid who plays for Juventus alongside Weston McKennie and Timmy Weah. You've got Çalhanoğlu, Demiral. So there's a nice blend of youth and experience. They've got Vincenzo Montella on the bench, who I think is a pretty good coach. And they're going to have a lot of fans. There's a huge Turkish population in Germany. They could have the equivalent of what Morocco had at the 2022 World Cup in Qatar and become a team that really galvanizes the fans, and they get a lift from that. So I could see Turkey making a deep run. Ooh.
And they're at plus 5,000. So unlike the Copa America where you were, plus 1,600 or whatever, this is plus 5,000. So you'd win a lot. At Croatia being plus 4,000, is it fair if I went with them as a dark horse or no?
One of my biggest pet peeves is the bastardization of the term dark horse. And there is a cautionary tale for you. Doug McIntyre had a nice career going as a sports journalist. And then in consecutive tournaments, the 2022 Men's World Cup, the 2023 Women's World Cup, he tried to push Germany as his dark horse, and it's destroyed his credibility. His career has never recovered from that. So be careful. I mean, Croatia, that is the runner-up at the 2018 World Cup, semifinalist in 2022. So I don't know. Whatever the odds are, I don't know if they qualify as a dark horse.
Well, I mean, no, Croatia's at 4,000 and Turkey is at 5,000. So it's a plus 4,000 and plus 5,000. So, I mean, Croatia is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the 10th, the 10th longest odds. I mean, come on, man. It's fair enough. From a betting
perspective,
in this Croatia team.
Yeah, from a betting perspective, I suppose they qualify. Yes.
All right. Well, I'm definitely going with them. All right. You went with Ecuador. Hell, come on. All right. Well, anybody else out here floating your boat?
No, but I should say Turkey, they're in a group with Portugal, Georgia, and Czechia. I'm sorry. I screwed that up already once on our pod. I want to make sure I get that right this time. Portugal, Czechia, and Georgia.
Don't worry.
And Turkey. So I guess I'm picking them to get out of that group. And then depending on what the knockout stage matchups are, I think they could advance a couple of rounds beyond that. So look out for Turkey this summer.
You poo-pooed my Croatia pick, but they've also never made it past the quarterfinals when it comes to the Euros.
That is interesting. They have a much better World Cup pedigree than they do Euros. So by that logic, I suppose they do count as a dark horse for the Euros.
Given what's happened in the opposite way in terms of recent history with Italy, where do you see Italy right now? I mean, again, it's plus 16, so they would be equivalent of your Ecuador in the other tournament. But
yeah, I mean, it's crazy to say this about the 4-time World Cup winners and the reigning European champions, but there is sort of an outsiderish feel to Italy at this Euros. So if you pick them to win it, that would feel like a somewhat brave pick to me. So I still don't think they're a dark horse. It is Italy, but it's not the craziest thing in the world to try to pass off Italy as a dark horse.
All right. So maybe I'll just settle in on a Belgium as that golden generation fades and everything. Everything. All right. Well, what else we got, Mosse? Anything else?
That's it. Time for your one for the road.
All right. Listen, let's wrap this up. And as I said before, we're going to go deep as we get closer and closer to the tournament, and obviously as we get into it. This was just a little bit of primer and things that we were thinking about when it came to both of these tournaments. And when it comes to the Copa America, the United States has participated in Copa America now a number of times. Back in 1993, back in 1995, famously went to the semifinal, and then of course the Copa America Centenario, which was back in 2016, right, Mosse? Is that what it was?
Correct.
Wow. When the U.S. also went to the semifinals. It is such an interesting tournament, and I'll never forget, as we were preparing for the '94 World Cup, Bora Milutinovic, our coach at the time, talking about how important it was that we were going to play in that '93 Copa America. And even after the '94 World Cup, the opportunity to go back in 1995, all of us recognized how the experience, both on and off the field in 1993, had benefited us in 1994. And when we came back in 1995, we had a much better idea, and I'll be honest, a much greater respect for what it is. Now, this was back in a day where, we knew what Copa America was, but obviously internet and communication and all the different ways that you are able to see soccer, it was kind of out of sight, out of mind for a lot of us. And so by the time we got our first taste in '93, we didn't get out of the group and it was over. And so '95, I think we really relished the opportunity of playing against these teams. Now, in that instance, we were away in 2016, and obviously come this summer, it's at home. And so you get the best of both worlds. You get all of this distilled quality and talent that exists in South America. And these 10 teams, and while there is, a hierarchy and a disparity between the top and the bottom, keep in mind that CONCACAF, the confederation in which we play, is 41, 42 teams, or 42 members out there. So it's a very different type of dynamic in CONCACAF than the competition that just having 10 different teams in CONMEBOL is. And so having the best of both worlds, where you get to play this talent and these teams in preparation for the big thing, which is coming in 2026, but you also get to do it at home. And let's be fair, a lot of these teams also get the advantage of getting the lay of the land and coming over and playing in the United States, a place that they are all hoping to play in 2026. It is that best of all worlds, and certainly of both worlds for a U.S. And what is on offer when it comes to the U.S. is a place in history, and a place in history that we are kind of interlopers and visitors to as guests of this tournament, even though it's happening in the U.S. And we talked before about how the U.S. is searching, and some people are critical of this U.S. team under Greg Berhalter in that they don't have that win, that definitive type of win. And who knows? It possibly could start and happen this summer. In 1995, when we went to the semifinals, again, we saw Bora Milutinovic, who wasn't our coach anymore. We were under Steve Sampson, and we went through all sorts of craziness in getting to that final. To that semifinal. We lost the semifinal, and then ended up losing the third place game. But we went to a semifinal, and I'll never forget talking to Bora Milutinovic after, saying, "This was so important. This was so important for you as individual players, but also important for this U.S. team in terms of your development." And I could go on and tell stories and stories and stories about that summer that we spent in a place called Paysandú, Uruguay, and all the different things that happened both on and off the field. But that's for another pod. My point is, ultimately, when it comes to the end of this pod and my one for the road, is that we're in for a treat this summer, and it is going to be fun. And it is going to give a little sliver and a little taste of what is coming in 2026. And the individual players and the great teams that are going to be on offering this summer, I think are going to open some eyes, I think are going to amaze, and I think are going to provide this U.S. team and this U.S. audience a really unique opportunity. And so I'm really excited to broadcast it. I know a lot of people. I was just talking to one of my son's teachers who is going to get on the road and travel from place to place that the U.S. is playing, and really making a summer trip. He has a senior and a senior trip with his son as they travel around through Copa America and see these different games and celebrate the game that they love, following the team that they love. So it's going to bring a lot of people together, some hopefully wonderful games on the field and some wonderful experiences off the field for everybody. So we could not be more excited. Mosse, anything before we go?
You know, because the theme of this episode was CONCACAF teams and dark horses, we had no occasion to mention Messi. But I'm going to mention him now just so we can cheat and put him in the title of this episode somehow. Also excited to watch Lionel Messi this summer.
I mean, look, the stories are endless, right? Obviously, when it comes to, you mentioned, Italy, and can they find a way back, even with all of their futility relative to the World Cup? Is it coming home when it comes to England after losing it in penalties in that dramatic fashion? Mbappe and company still at the top of their game, that golden generation of Belgium fading out, all of those different things that you mentioned. Your Brazilian team, who you are, I think, coming around to, but still not quite there, although I might be much more bullish about this team. And then, of course, Messi in the first big tournament that we are seeing him since winning the World Cup. And who knows, maybe it's a prelude to once again going back to a World Cup, defending his World Cup championship in 2026, and defending it in what is now his new home and his backyard of the United States. It's going to be fun. A lot of stories on and off the field for us to tell, and we can't wait to do it. All right, should we head out of here, Mosse?
Yep, that's it.
All right, keep reviewing, keep downloading, keep subscribing, and doing all the different things that you do out there when it comes to the State of the Union podcast. We're going to keep cranking out the content all summer. We'll be doing it every single day during those tournaments. It's going to be fun. Mosse will be there most days, but he's going to be pulled in a lot of different directions. But it's all fun. This is all labor of love type of stuff that we are doing when it comes to the broadcasting of these two tournaments. We'll talk to you again next time on the State of the Union. And until then, and as always, my friends, size the day.